Tired of being misunderstood? Discover how Sigma females deal with toxic relationships and learn how they protect their energy in a world that rarely understands them. The world sees the Sigma female as mysterious, detached, confident. She's the woman who walks alone by choice. She doesn't fit in, not because she can't, but because she refuses to. She values truth over approval, solitude over noise, and self-respect over convenience. But even the most self-possessed women can find themselves in toxic situations. No one is immune, not even the Sigma. Because toxic people don't always show up as enemies. They arrive as friends, lovers, mentors. They flatter, they imitate, they slip through the cracks, and sometimes they find their way in before the Sigma female has a chance to lock the doors. So what happens then? How does a woman built on self-sufficiency and emotional intelligence handle emotional chaos, manipulation, gaslighting, and control? Quietly, precisely, and powerfully. Let's start with understanding the Sigma female. She's not interested in attention. She doesn't crave validation. She lives by her own code, but that same independence often isolates her. The world doesn't know what to do with a woman who doesn't need to be needed, and that's where the problem begins. Because toxic people thrive in confusion, in blurred lines, in emotional dependency. The Sigma female? She refuses all of it, which makes her a threat and a target. People don't try to manipulate her because she's weak. They try because she's strong. She becomes a challenge, a puzzle to solve. And that's when the emotional games begin. At first, it's subtle. The guilt tripping, the backhanded compliments, the attempts to break her boundaries without actually crossing a line. But she notices. She always notices. Sigma females are observers. While others are reacting, she's processing. She's storing every inconsistency, every red flag, every shift in tone. She won't call it out right away. She's not reactive like that. She lets it build, quietly, until she has the full picture. And then, she acts, but she doesn't explode. She doesn't beg. She doesn't perform. She detaches, emotionally, strategically, completely. Before we go deeper, let's talk about what toxic relationships actually look like. Because they don't always scream abuse. Sometimes they whisper guilt. They show up as obligation. They hide behind, "I'm just looking out for you." Toxicity wears many faces. Control masked as concern. Gaslighting disguised as logic. Manipulation wrapped in love. For the Sigma female, this is where her emotional intelligence kicks in. She doesn't just listen to what people say. She reads their energy, their patterns, their inconsistencies. And the moment she senses a repeated misalignment, she shifts. The survival tactic of the Sigma female? Boundaries. Not walls, not aggression. Boundaries. She doesn't scream, "Don't talk to me like that." She calmly replies, "That's not something I tolerate." She doesn't explain her every move. She simply stops showing up. Her independence becomes her armor. She's not afraid to be alone, so she's never afraid to leave. She sets boundaries by being unavailable to nonsense. She says no without apology. She creates space without guilt. And if that space gets disrespected, she disappears. Not to be dramatic, but to preserve herself. But here's the part most people don't see. Even Sigma females get hurt. They don't show it. They don't post about it. But toxic relationships leave bruises, especially when trust was involved. The emotional toll runs deep. Not because she depended on the other person, but because she expected integrity. And when that's broken, she doesn't rage. She questions herself. Was I too cold? Did I ignore the signs? Should I have said something sooner? That's the hard part, the shame, the self-doubt, because Sigma females hold themselves to high standards. And when they're betrayed, they don't just blame the other person. They analyze where they went wrong. But that's where the healing begins. Sigma females don't wallow. They reflect. They get quiet. They go inward, not to hide, but to realign. And when it gets really bad, they seek out what most wouldn't expect. support, a therapist, a trusted confidant, a space where they can express without being judged for feeling. Healing doesn't look like revenge. It looks like clarity, like journaling at 2 a.m., like walking away from people who don't seem that bad, like recentering, regrounding, rebuilding the parts that were chipped away in silence. And when she comes back, she's different, stronger, colder, sharper, not out of bitterness, but wisdom. She knows her value now, not just in solitude, but in how she allows others to treat her. She no longer negotiates peace. She no longer gives it one more chance. She no longer lets energy slide just because someone says the right words. She becomes unshakable. And that's what toxic people fear the most. Someone they can't guilt, confuse, or control. A woman who knows herself so well that manipulation bounces off her like wind against a mountain. Moving forward, Sigma females don't carry the past. They carry lessons. They forgive themselves. They refine their boundaries. And they get even more selective about who gets access. They embrace being misunderstood. They stop explaining their distance. And they start prioritizing peace like it's oxygen because to them it is. So if you're a Sigma female who's ever found yourself in a toxic dynamic, let this be your reminder. You're not weak for letting them in. You're powerful for making sure they never get back in again. Drop in the comments if you've ever cut off a toxic connection in silence and never looked back. Subscribe to Silent Power, the Sigma Women for weekly content that honors your strength, your boundaries, and your journey back to self.